Hi, my name is Isabella Souza, and today I'll be presenting my findings as per juror perception of fMRI scan evidence in legal proceedings. You might first be wondering, what is fMRI and what's its role in the courtroom? Well, Mohammed and his colleagues in 2006, using fMRI scan technology, have identified the parts of the brain that become active when someone formulates a lie. And as Reardon in 2015 cites, this discovery has inspired lawyers to proffer fMRI scans taken of defendants outside of the courtroom as evidence of their inability to form criminal intent, and even to prove that plaintiffs were still experiencing pain years after an accident, as was the case with Koch versus West Emulsions, Inc. In terms of perception in current literature, McCabe and Castell in 2008 found that even if fMRI data does not add value to a particular claim, people will perceive scientific explanations as better written and even grant them higher ratings of scientific reasoning when they included visually stimulating scientific data like bar graphs. And even before the fMRI technique for lie detection even emerged, in a mock trial scenario similar to that of my experiment, Casson and Dunn in 1997 found that after mock jurors were exposed to computer animated displays which recreated accident scenarios, support for the plaintiff more than doubled. In this study, I examined whether or not the inclusion of fMRI scan evidence would change verdict counts, increase juror confidence in their verdict, and/or increase their perceived strength of argument consistent with that verdict. I hypothesized that there would be an increase in the difference between the number of pro-plaintiff and pro-defendant verdicts, that there would be an increase in the perceived confidence levels of participants in their verdict, and finally, that there would be an increase in the perceived strength of argumentation. To test my hypotheses, 35 high school students serving as mock jurors were asked to read through an online trial transcript adapted from a 2013 civil case, SEC versus Landislav Shavacho. I chose a civil case to minimize any predispositions student participants might have towards criminal proceedings that have been popularized in the media. This transcript included opening and closing statements as well as witness testimony. The survey taken after reading through the transcript requested their verdict, their confidence in that verdict, and to rank their perceived strength of argumentation for the side consistent with the verdict that they had just selected. Here's an example of the trial transcript that mock jurors received. And here's an example of the online survey that mock jurors completed. Both the control and experimental groups received the same trial transcript with the exception of one witness. In the experimental group, one traditional witness testimony was swapped for that of two experts that testified to their conclusions of an fMRI scan taken of the defendant. Shown on the left, labeled figure 1, is the actual scan that the experimental group received. In this scan, the left medial and left inferior frontal lobes, as previously identified by Mohammed in 2006, are lit up, indicating that the defendant was lying when asked an essential question of the case. The expert for the plaintiff testified that the scan proves that the defendant had lied, and the counter-expert for the defendant articulated that fMRI technology for the purposes of lie detection is today unreliable, subjective, and not generally accepted by the scientific community at large. To analyze these data, responses were generated on a 1 to 4 Likert scale, by which participants indicated the number 1 to communicate that they were least confident and that they perceived the weakest argumentation for the side consistent with their verdict. They indicated a 4 to communicate that they were the most confident and that they had perceived the strongest argumentation. Both t-tests and chi-square tests were used to compare these relative weights. In terms of verdict distribution, in the experimental group indicated by the red bar in the graph, there were far more guilty verdicts rendered than in the control group represented by the blue bar. This difference was found to be statistically significant. Specifically, a 0.028 asymptotic difference was determined by a chi-square test. In terms of confidence levels, while there was no statistically significant difference found between the experimental and control groups, the mean confidence level of 2.5 in the experimental group was higher than that of the control group at 2.41, indicating a trend that mock jurors exposed to fMRI evidence were more confident in their verdicts. In terms of strength of argument, a t-test determined that a statistically significant difference exists, in which the experimental group rated the side consistent with their verdict with a higher average of 3.11 versus the 2.71 average in the control group. In effect, they associated a higher quality of legal argumentation with their verdict when exposed to fMRI scan evidence. And so, to conclude, my findings support Casson and Dunn's results, in which the presentation of a form of a computer animated display caused a significant change in verdict counts. This should caution legal scholars and judges alike when permitting these scans to be admitted into the record, as they support that viewing fMRI scan evidence can significantly influence legal outcomes without the necessary consensus within the scientific community over its accuracy. If future research were to be conducted, a larger sample size may be used, and the study could be replicated on people of the legal jury serving age. And here are my references. Thank you.